All right, no one can ever forget those horrific images of 9/11. Remember then, the planes smashing into those buildings on a sunny New York day. And then, of course, the collapse of not just 2, but 3 World Trade buildings. And that's what troubles internationally respected architect Richard Gage. And he's causing a stir at the moment in the US, claiming the buildings were destroyed by controlled demolitions with explosives. The planes were simply a distraction.
Now, a different kind of engineering question. 1,000 engineers and architects from 47 different cities today called for a new independent investigation into 9/11 this morning. It happened at news conferences that were held in 47 cities across North America, including one here in Victoria. The group is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, founded by an architect from San Francisco. The group says it has new evidence suggesting that explosives, not planes, alone brought down the 2 World Trade Center towers and a third 47-story skyscraper on that fateful day, September 2001.
There was no plane hitting that building, and there was no proper investigation or explanation given why that building also fell in the way and the fashion it did. It basically collapsed at free fall speed. That's not possible.
Today, I'm quite pleased to announce that now we have more than 1,000 architects and engineers signed on to the AE 9/11 Truth petition, demanding of Congress a new and truly independent, unimpeachable investigation into the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers on 9/11.
People ridiculed Gage and others when he had 20 members, then 100, then 500, then peer-reviewed journals, now 1,000, and growing, and they're not going to stop.
At this time, I'd like to introduce to you a very special guest who can provide some more perspective for us. Tom worked as an explosives technician for Controlled Demolition Inc. He worked on major projects such as the Seattle Kingdom, Three Rivers Stadium, Philadelphia Naval Hospital, Keyspan gas holders in New York, among others.
A story that just a few column failures can cause a synchronized global collapse. I got to tell you, well, that's just nonsense.
Well, as somebody who does this work for a living, do you think there's any chance that fire could cause such an implosion?
Never. Never. Not even possible. So when I saw these things happen on the TV when I was home in the Eastern Shore, I knew something was up. This was just not as what they were thinking.
I'm Anders Bjorkman. I explained on my website that you cannot destroy a building by dropping at the top in the bottom. You have to destroy it from the bottom. And then a lot of people criticize that. They said, but Dr. Bazant says the opposite. And he has written all these papers. Of course, I looked at the papers. So I contacted the editor, Ross Korotis, who is somewhere in the United States. Said, do you mind if I write an article and say that this is not correct? He said, go ahead. 3rd June, yes, we have reviewed this is good. Ross Korotis said we will publish. The small top part can never apply sufficient energy to destroy the bottom. This guy is presenting a false theory.
We have evidence of very high-tech explosives in all the dust throughout Lower Manhattan of this building.
Glad to address that, Richard. You're right. They're not made, these chips of that iron-bearing material. They're made in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania by the Pittsburgh Paint Company. They're made in Kansas City, Missouri by the Tinemex Paint Company.
Paint? But this question, perhaps there's a prosaic explanation for these chips. Perhaps it is just paint, and in particular primer paint. So we finally found a sample of the primer paint. So this is actual primer paint then from the World Trade Center. You will see that they are distinctly different. Now I can call it anomalous because it doesn't behave like paint, certainly very distinct from the primer paint actually used in the World Trade Center.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so, nobody who produced it.
The National Institute for Standards and Technology said that there's no witnesses to molten metal and there's no reports of molten metal from ground zero. That's bullshit. That's a load of shit. Not only was it molten metal, but there were beams that got so hot that they were bent. And they weren't bent. These beams couldn't have bent without being heated up. But you know for a fact, like, there was molten metal down there? Mm-hmm.
But it turns out one section of steel was kept. How it got to be in its present state was described by the New York Times as perhaps the deepest mystery uncovered in the investigation.
Those parts where the entire half-inch of the beam is gone, entirely dissolved right through, and so something happened to cause the steel to really thin and in some places to disappear entirely.
Professor Sisson says it didn't melt, it eroded. The cause were those very hot fires and the debris after 9/11 that cooked the steel over weeks. The sulfur came from masses of gypsum wallboard that was pulverized and burnt in the fires.
2 holes in the flange so I could lift the completed assembly. I then placed gypsum board on the top and bottom flanges and subdivided the space in the web with multiple thicknesses of gypsum board. Gypsum board was crushed, and on one side dry chunks of gypsum was placed, while on the other side gypsum that was soaked in a bucket of rainwater was used. Fire blazed throughout the night, bringing the temperatures high enough to make the wide flange beam glow red. The beam did not have any holes whatsoever.
There was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when he got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand?
The reason I was calling you is because I was hoping you could help me out with a few questions I had for you. Okay. Well, I've been reading some stuff on the internet lately, and I came across your name when you were in the emergency ops center with Cheney, and you asked him if the orders still stand. I was just wondering, like, what orders were you referring to?
Okay, I'm really not. I'm not prepared to talk about this subject at all.
Oh no?
No.
Oh. I mean, you must have saw, like, you know, all the 9/11 conspiracies out there and stuff like that.
I really don't have anything else to add to it.
So you can't, like, ease my mind and tell me, like, what those orders were that you were asking Cheney about? Can you at least tell me that those orders that you were asking about, they were stand-alone orders, were they not?
I have nothing further to add.
Do you think if you were to answer my question about the orders, do you think that would get Cheney in trouble?
The 9/11 Commission Report is the authoritative narrative on the events surrounding 9/11. I have nothing to add.
Top construction firm WTC destroyed by controlled demolition.
They said to me, when they studied the film footage and everything else, Alan, it is irrefutable. The building, the Twin Towers, were brought down by controlled explosions from within.
Now remember just a month ago, back on April 23rd, the headline, bombshell, Silverstein wanted to demolish Building 7 on 9/11. Shortly before the building collapsed, several NYPD officers and Con Edison, that's the power company, workers told me that Larry Silverstein, the property developer of One World Financial Center, was on the phone with his insurance carrier to see if they could authorize the controlled demolition of the building since its foundation was already unstable and expected to fall. So there's the lie. No modern steel building has fallen from fire. 3 do it that day. Building 7 not hit by an aircraft. So here's this guy's evidence that we're making it up that they blew up Building 7. And his evidence is they had a big discussion in front of him about blowing it up.
There's always a bigger picture. People think, oh my God, how can I handle 9/11? And they have no idea that 9/11 is the tip of the iceberg. And you're just going to yourself, I'm not going to tell him, I'm not going to tell him. And you learn more and more, and you get sicker and sicker. And then you meet people like you here in this room, and it just brings your heart open again. And you go out, and you realize you're not alone, you're inspired, you're working out of a sense of unity and oneness. And that's what we have to do. That's our strength. The truth works through networks of love and connection. And I think that's how we will ultimately win, is through the truth, through love, and through unity.